Welcome back. All right, so I want to take a look at where we stand right now in terms of teams in the Eastern Conference. I want to do the Eastern Conference. I might do the Western Conference tomorrow. But yeah, it is interesting to see how we're not seeing that big separation between the top eight and the bottom eight yet. Although there are three teams currently outside of a playoff spot that have pretty good points percentages, and then you get into teams that are flirting with dropping out of the race here. Most surprisingly, Washington and Pittsburgh. Those are the surprising ones. Although Columbus, bit of a surprise for me, but predictions were all over the place. Of course, Ottawa was supposed to be in the hunt too. So what happened? Well, you've got Boston, Detroit, and Toronto are the top three right now in the Atlantic. In the case of the Boston Bruins, they're 10-2. They're 6-0 at home. They're 4-2 away from home. So no matter where they're playing, they've been pretty good. They're scoring 4.17 goals per game, and they're allowing 2.5 goals per game. 833 points percentage dwarfs everything else on the board, although New Jersey's trying to get there. Over the last 2 weeks, and the 2 weeks meaning since October 23rd, they're 5-1, and they have a plus 21 in goal differential. So pretty strong numbers for Boston. Goal differential is, of course, goals scored minus goals against, and you have your goal differential. And so, yeah, plus 21 is not bad. That is way ahead of everybody else in the East. Usually when I see that, I expect some kind of a clawback because I do think there's some decent parity in the East as well. But yeah, Boston's off to a really good start. As is Detroit. They're 7-3-2, so they've won 7 out of 12. They're 5-1-1 at home. A little bit more of a struggle away from home where they're 2-2-1, but if they can keep winning 5 out of every 7 at home, they've got an excellent chance of making the playoffs. They're scoring 3.08 goals per game. They're allowing 2.92 goals per game. Their points percentage of 667 is one of the better numbers in the East. And when you're looking at the Atlantic in particular, they're in good shape in the Atlantic. So last 3 weeks or last 2 weeks I should say, they're 5-3. So there's some really busy teams right now. But yeah, Detroit's been playing well. Toronto is 7-4-2, so their points percentage is 615, just showing how quickly those points percentages can change early in the season, right? Because the only difference is they've played one more game than Detroit, and it's a regulation loss, and it's a 52-point difference. So, just big difference there. At home, Toronto's 5-1. On the road, they're 2-3-2. So their road record is a problem. Their home record is excellent. Their goals per game, they're scoring 2.85. They're allowing 2.62. So what's funny to me is that we always talk about the goaltending and the defense and all that. The problem with Toronto really has been they haven't been scoring enough goals. Their goaltending's been fine. Their defense has been okay. While certain defensemen definitely get called out a lot, the reality is their numbers are good. Their 615 points percentage is decent. They have a +3 in goal differential. Over the last 3 weeks, they're 3-2-2. But it feels like they're turning things around, that they went through this rough patch, and now they're coming through it, and they're winning some games. So those are your top three in the Atlantic. New Jersey's 12 games. They're 9-3. 750 is the points percentage. Their goal differential is a +13. So across the board, New Jersey's doing very well. And at home, they're 5-2. Away from home, they're 5-1. So we see two teams in the Metro that are really good at home and really good on the road. And one of them is New Jersey. And that feels strange to say. 3.67 goals scored per game. They're allowing 2.58. So their goaltending and defense have been good. The last 2 weeks, they're 6-1. So they have definitely been heating up. They're playing very, very well. We can ask the question whether or not they're peaking at the wrong time. But hey, if you're peaking a little bit too early, it's better than not peaking at all, which for New Jersey has sometimes been the case in recent years. Carolina, in their 12 games, they're 8-3-1, so their points percentage is 708. So both of them above 700. Their goal differential is only a +5, and at home they're surprisingly only 3-2. Away from home, they're 5-1-1. But again, they lost at home last night against Toronto. So if they'd won that, right? And if Toronto had lost that one away from home, we'd really have something to talk about. And they wouldn't be sitting in that spot either. So that's just how volatile these standings are. But for Carolina away from home, they're 5-1-1. They're excellent. 3.08 goals scored per game. They're allowing 2.83. I still think they can score more. I know they can. Their last 2 weeks, they're 5-2. So Carolina's playing very well, like New Jersey. Detroit's had a good run. Boston, and again, as I said, Toronto's pulling their way out of it. So these 5 teams all feel like playoff teams right now, right? The Rangers, depends on the day. They're 6-4-3 overall. Their points percentage is .577, equivalent to the Florida Panthers down here and below. 3 teams that are currently below the playoff line. So this is how tenuous the Rangers' hold could be unless they get things really going in their favor at home. They're 3-2-3. I'm surprised at how mediocre that record is. So they've only won 3 out of 8 at home. They're 3-2 away from home. Their goal differential is a -3. They're scoring 2.77 goals per game. They're allowing 2.92. They're 3-3-2 over the last 2 weeks. So they're not below 500 over the last 2 weeks, but they're not setting the world on fire either. So of the teams I've gone through so far, the Rangers look the most vulnerable. Then you get to the wild cards. Tampa Bay is the number 1 wild card at 7-4-1 with a .625 points percentage. Notice they're 1 point behind Toronto with the 1 game in hand. We'll see whether or not they win that game in hand. All that fun stuff. At home, they're 3-1-1. Away from home, they're 4-3. 3.33 goals scored per game. They're allowing 3.08 goals per game. Their goal differential being a +2. Last 2 weeks, they're 4-1. So Tampa Bay is definitely turning it around. They're starting to play like Tampa Bay again. But it's taking a little bit for them to really move their way up the standings. That being said, I would be very surprised if they're not one of the top 3 teams soon enough. Florida, it's been a bit of a slog for them lately. They're 7-5-1. I did the video on them yesterday. .577 is the point percentage. Again, as I said, same as the Rangers, which means they're vulnerable to people or to teams that are below them. Philly, the Islanders, and Buffalo, all with points percentages higher than Florida's right now. At home, Florida's 3-0-1. Away from home, they're 4-5. Road trip's been tough for them. The last 2 weeks, they're 4-4, and a lot of those losses on the road. All those losses on the road, I should say, because they don't have a regulation loss at home. So there you go, problem solved. No mystery there. They're a +1 in goal differential. They've scored 3.23 goals per game. They've allowed 3.23 goals per game. When you see that, what it means is there's a shootout goal that qualifies towards totals in one and not in the other. So essentially, they're at a break-even point. And for Florida, it is a more tenuous spot that they're in than we had expected. I do figure they're going to get it together. That being said, though, we do have 3 teams below the playoff line that are playing well. And as I said, coming into this season, I did not expect a big gap between the top 8 and the bottom 8 this year. There's always going to be a gap somewhere, but I didn't think we would have like a huge difference between the teams that are top 8 and bottom 8. I thought it was a weird narrative. Well, how are these teams going to make up these points? Well, everybody starts from 0, so it's not a big deal. Philadelphia, in 11 games, they're 6-3-2. It does feel like they've faded. 633 points percentage at home, they're 3-1-1. On the road, they're 3-2-1. Their last 2 weeks, they are 2-2-2. So they've won 2 out of 6, but they've only lost 2 in regulation out of the last 6. So they're winning and they're getting points often enough that they're still in the hunt. That 636 points percentage is higher than the Rangers, higher than Tampa Bay's, higher than Florida's as well. Still higher than Toronto's. So if Philadelphia can right this ship, they're still in good shape to end up getting one of the top 8 spots. That being said, we have expected them to drop off. That's probably going to happen, but hasn't really happened yet. The Islanders, they're 7-5. They have a .583 points percentage, so ahead of the Rangers and ahead of Florida, who are on this side of the board. At home, the Islanders are 4-2. Away from home, they're 3-3. 3.42 goals scored per game, 2.5 goals against per game. So the Islanders have played very well. They have a +11 in their goal differential, and in the last 2 weeks, they are 5-2. So if the Islanders can keep this up, if Lane Lambert can keep the ship heading in the right direction, they're going to be over here. Fisherman jerseys, I don't think can sink them at this point. Buffalo, 7-5 as well, and with almost exactly the same numbers as the Islanders. They're also 4-2 at home. They're also 3-3 away from home. They also have a +11 in their goal differential. I had to do a bit of a double take looking at the app when I was writing all this down. Basically, Buffalo and the Islanders are twinsies. The last 2 weeks, they're not. Buffalo's 3-4 over the last 2 weeks. So if you are a Sabres fan that believes, well, that's great, they had the good start, but call me in November. Well, it's November, and November's saying, picture's a little uncertain. So yeah, 3-4, and they're scoring 4.08 goals per game. They're allowing 3.17. They are allowing too many goals. I don't have the goals for and against for Philadelphia. Philadelphia's got the same amount of goals for and against, so there's 0 in their plus-minus. I know they're not scoring enough, and I know Carter Hart is keeping them above water as well. even though they're on this side of the board. You guys know what I mean. But for Buffalo, yeah, 3-4 the last 2 weeks, and there's been some signs that maybe it's going to fall apart. But losing in Tampa and Carolina, there's no shame in that, as I said when they did it. Washington, 13 games, 5-6-2 record. Everybody's injured. 462 points percentage. They're a -3 in the plus-minus department when you look at goal differential. At home, they're 3-2-1. Away from home, they're a problematic 2-4-1. Not very good on the road. They're only scoring 2.69 goals per game. They're allowing 2.85. Over the last 2 weeks, they've only won 2 out of 7 games. They're 2-3-2. So the extra points in overtime and shootouts helping them in those games not to go 2-5, but it's been a pretty pronounced drop off for Washington this year. They're not getting enough goals. Ovechkin's got 7. After that, it is not a fantastic supporting cast scoring wise so far that we're seeing in Washington. Montreal, the drop off was expected, and I think we're seeing it now. They're 5-6-1 through their first 12 games. At home, they're 3-3. Away from home, they're 2-3-1. And you know what? If the home fans get 20 home wins they get to watch this year, good on them. And so if they can stay 500 at home, I think the fans will be happy. They're scoring 2.83 goals per game. They're allowing 3.33 goals against per game, so 3 and a third. 458 is the points percentage. The goal differential, -6, which is second worst in the East. The last 2 weeks, they are 2-3-1, so they've only won 2 out of 6. Same as Toronto, the difference being Toronto got off to a fantastic start. And in the case of, well, Toronto's 3-2-2, they're 2-3-1. Mediocre records all around. But yeah, for Montreal, this is kind of expected. And again, Toronto seems to be pulling themselves out of that mediocrity. Pittsburgh, what a huge drop off for Pittsburgh. And this is where things get interesting for them because now they're sitting 5 points outside of a playoff spot, right? They have 10 points, and here's 15 points to get into the playoffs. So it gets dicey pretty quick. Their 417 points percentage is low, of course, because they are 2 games below NHL 500. -2 is the goal differential. Their home record, 3-1-1, is good, but away from home, they're 1-5-1. So much like Washington, they're having problems away from home. Last 2 weeks, just a write-off. 0-6-1. That road trip just killed them. 3.5 goals per game, 3.67 goals against per game. So whether you want to blame the defense, whether you want to say goaltending's been an issue, whether you want to put the onus on either or both, that's up to you guys. But for me, Pittsburgh has been very surprisingly bad. And I don't bet against Pittsburgh, and I'm still not. I still think somehow Pittsburgh ends up on this end of the board before the end of the season. But it's been a rough last couple of weeks. Ottawa has also had a rough couple of weeks. In 11 games, they're 4-7. So they currently have 8 points. It's 15 to get in the playoffs. They're 7 points back of a playoff spot. This is going off the rails quickly. 364 is the points percentage. They've scored the same amount of goals as they've allowed, which is 3.45 goals per game. They're 4-3 at home. They're 0-4 on the road. You can't be winless on the road at this point in the season. If you want to be on this side of the board, and that's the case with the Ottawa Senators. And the last 2 weeks, they're 1-5. So they'd won 4 games in a row at home. They couldn't sweep that homestand. They lost that 5th game, and they haven't won a home game outside of that. They haven't won a road game either. This again is a situation where Ottawa was supposed to be better this year. They were supposed to be threatening for or in the playoffs, and right now they don't look like that team. And then you get to Columbus. Columbus is at the bottom of the board, 3-9 on the season, so their points percentage 250. Not great. A -25 in goal differential. Yep. At home, 2-5. Away, 1-4. Keep in mind, 2 of those losses that are home and away were in Finland. So, does it count as a road game or a home game? You're both on the road in that case. But anyways, they lost both. They're scoring 2.5 goals per game. They're allowing 4.58 goals against per game. That -25 is ridiculously bad. Especially only in 12 games. So their goal differential is on pace for historically bad by Columbus's perspective. Their last 2 weeks, they're 1-5. So for Columbus, the time is really running short for them to salvage this already because of the fact that in order to have, you've got 6 points here, you're chasing teams that are 9 points ahead of you. In order to catch up to them, you have to not just maintain their pace, you have to eclipse it, and you have to eclipse it by 10 points to finish ahead of these teams. And then you have to hope that other teams don't also eclipse that, and then you have to catch them as well. It's very difficult in the National Hockey League to make up that ground once you've lost it, and so we'll see whether or not Columbus can. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Which teams stay on this side of the board and which teams end up on this side of the board, and vice versa. Which teams that are over here are going to end up over here. So let me know your thoughts. Is this the year that Washington and Pittsburgh both end up falling off because of, in Washington's case, injury, in Pittsburgh's case, maybe it's injury combined with age? Age could be a factor with the Capitals as well. Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. If you're browsing your way through, you just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.